Muriro on Monday. Brace yourself. It's a hard hat area.
And of course, good evening. Star FM sounding good all the time and always making us your number one selection. We do appreciate that. I hope you had a pleasant day. And as we wind up Monday, we're getting to some serious issues and, of course, some discussions and answering questions that a number of Zimbabweans have on their minds and have been asking and that need to be addressed. And of course, this is Muriro on Mondays. My name is Nikki. I'm sitting in for Linda Muriro. Now, today we are looking at gender-based violence and sexual abuse of minors. And of course, we're looking at what needs to be done. It's everyone's question. We would appreciate you also responding on our WhatsApp platform and speaking to our guests this evening. And we will have in the studio on the line Honorable Sithembiso Nyoni, the Minister of Women Affairs, Community, Small and Medium Enterprises Development, and also Mr. Walter Vengesai, the Director of Padare. But joining me right now in the studio, I'd like to welcome Commissioner Sibongile Mauye, and she is part of the Zimbabwe Gender Commission. Good evening, Commissioner.
Good evening, Nikki.
Now, it's important for us to look at what is happening on the ground right now. And I'd like to introduce this issue by looking at some serious facts on the ground. Gender-based violence is one of the most prevalent human rights violations in the world. And it knows no social, economic or national boundaries. And worldwide, an estimated 1 in 3 women will experience physical or sexual abuse in her lifetime. And gender-based violence undermines the health, the dignity, security, and autonomy of its victims. Yet it remains shrouded in a culture of silence. And that is something that we must definitely address. Also, Zimbabwe, just like other countries, has not been spared from an increase in gender-based violence cases. Of late, men have been coming up front expressing their concern, as some are facing all forms of gender-based violence at the hands of their spouses or partners. And I guess that's why we have Padare joining us today. And also, there are questions that we need to ask. Where are we getting it wrong as a country? What needs to be done to address the situation, which is getting out of hand, resulting in minors as young as 8 facing sexual abuse, which is a form of gender-based violence? And of course, discussing these issues tonight and this evening. And as I said earlier on, that we would love to hear from you and also get your contributions regarding this issue. I will talk to you, Commissioner Mauye. I think that it's important for us to understand the objectives of the Zimbabwe Gender Commission and what you stand for.
Thank you, Nikki. Perhaps I should start by saying we are commemorating the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. And it is a time that we are actually very saddened and concerned about the issues that are actually happening. So I just thought I would preface my talk with that. The Zimbabwe Gender Commission is a constitutional commission, an independent commission which is established also in terms of Section 232 with other independent commissions. But Section 246 actually highlights the Gender Commission's mandate. And also this is done through the Gender Commission Act. So the Gender Commission monitors issues concerning gender equality. And it also investigates violations according to gender. It also has a complaints handling function where it receives complaints regarding gender. And it also has an advisory function where it advises the public concerning issues about gender equality. That is the public and also the private institutions. The Commission also recommends criminal, it's like the Commission recommends to the related organizations what should be done about those violations. So it actually recommends, criminal, so that people can actually be held account from a criminal perspective. And then we also investigate systemic violations in particular sectors. For example, when we are talking about the issue of sexual and gender-based violence, it is actually a sector, and we do those kind of investigations, and other sectors like even religious sectors. So in short, perhaps that is what the Zimbabwe Gender Commission stands for.
Thank you very much for that, Commissioner Mauye. And joining us on the line, Honourable Minister of Women Affairs, Community, Small and Medium Enterprises Development. Good evening to you, Honourable Minister.
Good evening.
Thank you so much for joining us. We do understand that there are slight challenges that you are facing logistically, but thank you so much for joining us on the line. I think let's get straight into business. So the Domestic Violence Act, which you administer, was enacted because of the escalation of domestic violence. Honourable Minister, what is it that, why is it that there seems to be no utilization of the provisions of the Act by the victims of the domestic violence?
Thank you very much. Good evening, Zimbabwe. Let me make a small correction. The Gender Violence Act is not being administered by my ministry. It's administered by the Ministry of Justice and Parliamentary Affairs. That's where that act is housed. So they would be the best people to answer certain questions about the act and how it is administered and so forth. But having said that, I think for me, what is happening in Zimbabwe today goes beyond just us looking at policies and acts and looking towards government to do something. This, to me, is a sign of a society that needs to introspect as a people in Zimbabwe what has gone wrong. For instance, I was talking to Prosecutor General 2 weeks ago, and I was very impressed because his idea is that we need to prevent crime rather than build more prisons to arrest people. If you see crime increasing, as a nation, any nation must look at itself and say, what is the problem? What is the cause? What has gone wrong? So in this gender-based violence, we can have as many acts as we want and build as many prisons as we can, but it does not correct what is going wrong. For me, what we are about this evening is really to look, to introspect as a nation and say who is not doing what within ourselves. Who is responsible for what? For protecting children. You know, what causes people to behave a certain way? There's something that is now amiss. And I think that apart from looking at the act, which is good, and reinforcing it, let us also introspect as a nation.
Thank you so much for that, Honourable Minister. And just to follow up on that, you know, some of the obstacles that can impede people from utilizing the provisions are traditional. You are saying that we need to maybe reflect as a country and try and figure out where we're getting it wrong. And we also look at cultural and religious reasons. For an example, it is un-African for a woman to report her husband if he's a perpetrator of gender-based violence. So in crafting the law, did government consider these issues? And in hindsight, what measures should be taken to ensure utilization of the laws that are available given the rampant cases of domestic violence, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think there is no, when a law is made, there is no other institutional norms or values that are above the law. The law is ultimate. That's why we make laws, so that people are governed under a law. So you don't make a law and then say this law is made, but people can, if people are killed through witchcraft, it's acceptable because it is cultural. If people are raped by religious bodies, it is acceptable because it's religion. I think, in my opinion, the law must be above all things. It must be obeyed and taken for what it is. So there should be no cultural or religious practice that is above the law, because laws are made to protect the people from certain practices. And therefore, we must make sure, as we look at the laws, that we all obey them, whether we are in the religious bodies or we are in the cultural circles.
Thank you so much for that, Honorable Minister. It's also important for us to look at the position of women in community. And as highlighted earlier on, that and even in conversations that I have had as an individual with women who have felt that they cannot stand up to a level of patriarchy that will then enforce some sort of power over women so that they can stand up to gender-based violence. How can we empower women? How can we give women a stronger voice so that they do not hover over or hide under the umbrella of patriarchy?
I think time has come where we really say this is not a women's problem. This is a societal problem. I have been in the women's movement. Some of us have been in the women's movement since 1995. Up to today, the situation of women is getting worse in some instances, which therefore means we need to go on the drawing board and say, what are we not doing right? What are we not doing right? Because for all the efforts that women's organizations have made, we should now be talking a different language. We should be celebrating rather than agonizing the way we are doing. So my take is this. I want to support what my Vice President, Dr. Chiwenga, said. He said the issue is not about women or children alone. The issue is about men and women. The issue begins in the family. And the Vice President says all these problems we are facing of child abuse, sexual abuse, gender-based violence, is because the family norms have broken. So we need to go into the drawing board and revise the culture that made our family respectable. Within the family, you felt protected. You felt respected. You felt that was a place for you to grow. That was a place for you to be. But that is no longer the case. So it really goes beyond the women themselves on their own. They have struggled on their own for a long time, and we have failed to break. So let the men also take responsibility. Let everybody in our society take responsibility. Let's go on the drawing board and say, what is it that builds Ubuntu? And let's abide by those values, man or woman. And we have been leaving this to women, and some men are now perpetrators because women are now, in some circles, too powerful and threatening the men. So by dealing with the women alone, in some areas we've solved problems, yes, but in other spheres we have not solved the whole problem. We have also caused problems for women, especially those that are married to weak men, and the men are threatened, and instead of improving themselves and upping their game to the level of their women, they end up using physical strength to show dominance.
Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
I believe that you are advocating for an inclusive approach where all stakeholders in the community are active in stopping and addressing gender-based violence. We'll come back to you, Honorable Minister, and of course want to talk about the different stakeholders whom you are working with as a ministry and how you are working together to address gender-based violence. I will come back to you, Commissioner Mauye. And I think that it's important for us to talk about some of the research that you have conducted. I do understand that you are undertaking a study. You have been undertaking, rather, a study on gender-based violence, whose results you have just released. Now, what have been the major highlights of that study as we get ready for the news at 7 o'clock?
Okay, actually, it is a national inquiry on sexual exploitation and abuse of young girls and child marriages. And this has been done in partnership with the UN, United Nations, and UN Women, and other stakeholders. And we have done this in 10 provinces and 11 spaces. And we were using an approach where we are looking at the lived experiences of the girls and the young women. And some of the findings, actually, that this issue is very complex. I think, like what Honorable Minister has been saying, that this issue, it is multifaceted, and the issues are actually interrelated. And some of the factors actually also include the breakdown of the family support system, which has broken down, and also the issues of poverty and lack of economic opportunities, perhaps generally in the country, the lack of school fees for children to proceed to higher levels, and also where there's also breakdown, or in the legal system is also not very accessible, where some violations have taken place. So the preliminary findings are actually that some of the religious and cultural practice, that is the negative ones, because also when we're looking at our culture, I think we need to look at some of the positive aspects which are in our culture, and then we also look at the negative side, because also we value the law, but there are also challenges in terms of access to the law, and also especially for people who are living in remote areas. And service delivery, we have seen that in very remote places there's the problem of service delivery. And then there's also the belief that if you have sex with a young person, then I don't know whether it's for personal reasons, sometimes perhaps it's for other reasons, but the issues of sex, I think, need to be discussed, because it looks like...
I do apologize. I'll need to stop you for now, Commissioner Mauye. Okay. And of course, we will get more information regarding the results from the study that the Zimbabwe Gender Commission has undertaken. If you're just tuning into Star FM, thank you so much for tuning in. And this is Muriro on Mondays. My name is Nikki, sitting in for Linda Muriro. We are looking at the issue of gender-based violence, sexual abuse of minors, and coming together as proactive communities to ask what needs to be done. And thank you to Honorable Minister of Women Affairs, Community, Small and Medium Enterprises Development, Honorable Sithembiso Nyoni, joining us on the line. And in the studio with me right now, I have Commissioner Sibongile Mauye from the Zimbabwe Gender Commission. Right now it is 7 o'clock. Star FM sounding good all the time. We cross over to the news desk.
Summer, back with a bang on Star FM. Star FM, sounding good all the time.
This is Muriro on Monday on Star FM. Muriro on Monday. Brace yourself. It's a hard hat area.
Good evening and thank you for tuning in to Star FM, sounding good all the time. And this is Muriro on Monday. My name is Nikki, sitting in for Linda Muriro. And today we talk about gender-based violence, sexual abuse of minors, and coming together as a community to ask tough questions on what needs to be done. And joining me on the line is the Honourable Minister of Women Affairs, Community, Small and Medium Enterprises Development, Honourable Sithembiso Nyoni. And in the studio with me right now, I have Commissioner Sibongile Mauye. She is a Commissioner of the Zimbabwe Gender Commission. And also joining us on the line, Director, Padare Director, Mr. Walter Vengesai. And so before we crossed over to the news with Spatisiwe, we were talking to you, Commissioner Mauye, and having undertaken a study on gender-based violence, whose results you've just released as the Zimbabwe Gender Commission. What have been the major highlights of that study? Maybe we can come back to that.
Okay, thank you so much, Nikki. Let me just reinstate that it is a national inquiry on sexual exploitation and abuse of young girls and child marriages. And the findings are based on lived experiences of the children and also those organizations and institutions that deal with children. So one of the things that we actually discovered was that actually this whole issue is very, very complex, and it has got a number of interrelated issues. And one of the things perhaps that I should start by highlighting is the issue of the breakdown of the family. The family system has really broken down in many spaces, and this is perhaps mostly because of the economic situation, issues of poverty, issues of unemployment, issues of lack of opportunities. So we find that you find single parenting, and there is sometimes no monitoring of children, and also even support. So we have children who are heading households who are on their own, and they sometimes do whatever their peers are doing. It was a very sad situation when we visited Hopley and Epworth, to find that young girls as young as 6, 7, 8, they're actually into commercial sex work because of some of these challenges. Then there's also the issue of the service providers themselves. Inadequate resources by the service providers. We're looking at the Department of Social Development in terms of its resourcing. We're also looking at the victim-friendly unit in terms of its resourcing. So you find that sometimes, these are supposed to react to situations, but they are not able because of the resources. So these are some of the issues. Of course, notwithstanding some of the issues that are happening in certain specific areas, like the areas where there is artisanal mining, we find that there are specific cases that are happening there where we find actually sometimes young girls actually leave school, or young boys also leave school. So there are certain specific contextual issues that are happening in certain areas. So, in terms of the findings, yes, those are some of the.
So you are basing a lot of the prevalence of these cases mainly on the family unit that has broken down.
From what we have seen, I would say so, And perhaps let me also add the issues of disability. We have seen that disabled children are very much exposed to abuse and to sexual abuse and incest within the family. And, like Honorable Minister was saying, society really has changed. Perhaps because of globalization, perhaps because of all these other influences around us, including the advancements in technology, people being exposed to other cultures. But the issues of incest are really something that is very, very, very sad, because instead of the family protecting the vulnerable, the family sometimes is actually acting as as the causes, or they're actually causing the abuses. Like we have heard recently in the press about the 9-year-old in Bulawayo and in Bindura and other places. Some of these things are actually happening in the family.
I would like to bring your attention to this story that was published in today's Herald. And Fungai Lupande, the Mashonaland Central Bureau, wrote that a couple from Chibara Farm in Concession was sentenced to 20 years each after the wife lured a 10-year-old girl and handed her over to her husband to sexually abuse her. And the wife watched as the husband raped the minor, a neighbor's child who is in grade 3, on 2 different occasions. I think that we need to keep that one in mind as we move forward. And in pursuance to your constitutional role as a Zimbabwe Gender Commission, you have been making inquiries of possible sexual abuses that have been levied against some men of cloth and in the religious sector. Maybe also please share with us what you have found from the victims. Are they forthcoming as far as sharing their experiences and addressing these matters are concerned?
Thank you, Nikki. Yes, we have been doing investigations in various sectors, including the one that I've just mentioned, the sexual exploitation of girls and child marriages, and also even other sectors like the religious sectors. Yes, we have been receiving complaints, but these are issues that are actually live and still in process. So we cannot talk about the deeper issues, but all I can say is that the Gender Commission is not intimidated. It will continue to investigate violations, whether they are from whatever sector it is, whether it's the public sector or the religious sector or high-profile individuals. The Constitution gives us the power to actually do those investigations and to do everything possible to ensure gender equality.
Thank you so much. I've got joining us on the line, Mr. Walter Vengesai is the director for Padare. Good evening to you.
Good evening, Nikki. Good evening, listeners.
And thank you so much for joining us. I think that the issue of inclusion is very important. We're talking to the Honorable Minister earlier on, and she highlighted that it is everyone's responsibility. We're at a level where we should believe that for us to adequately address issues regarding gender-based violence in the private and public sphere, we have to take an inclusive approach. Now, I think that it's important to find out how you have also been working with men as Padare. And please tell us, what strategies do you have in place to ensure more men participate in the fight against gender-based violence?
Thank you so much, Nikki. I'm sorry I couldn't be in the studio because of traffic. But I think as Padare, Ngundeni Men's Forum on Gender, we've been trying also to do our part to engage the other side of the problem, which is also the men. In all these cases that we are talking about, where we are talking about children being abused, on the other side, there is a man who is actually doing the abusing. So what we have been trying to do is to raise awareness among men and boys also around issues of gender-based violence, what constitutes gender-based violence, and also, more importantly, we have a program that we are also working with gender-based violence perpetrators as well, where we offer psychosocial support, and we are working with different stakeholders also. They refer cases to us, and we try and be part of the rehabilitation of some of these perpetrators that are abusing the children that we are talking about.
The truth on the ground is that men also suffer or face gender-based violence, and this could be from spouses, from partners. But you see, when we look at the prevalence, men are the main perpetrators. So it would seem as if in the messaging or the narrative, it seems as if, well, and some men in some sectors will feel that they are being attacked. But the truth is that men, in most cases, are the perpetrators. Now, we still have and still talk about and still experience and are shocked by a recurrence in situations where men continue to abuse women and girls. And the truth of the matter is, what is wrong? Where are we missing the point? What needs to be done? And in your findings as Padare, what do you feel is the problem?
I think we have a problem of patriarchy. That's the biggest problem that we have as a country. Patriarchy, which then contributes towards gender inequalities. We have men who feel like they are entitled to women, and they feel like the women don't have any rights, or they own women. So that kind of patriarchal thinking where women are not treated as equals, I think that's the major problem that we have that's contributing to most of these abuses. Because if we treat each other equally and we see each other as people, then I think this problem will be reduced. So for me, we need to work towards a society where everyone is seen as a person and where everyone has got equal rights so that they are treated the same.
Thank you for that. And whilst we're on the issue of gender equality, let me come to you, Honorable Minister Nyoni. And as Mr. Vengesai has noted, that the issue of equality may be one of the causes for gender-based violence. So would want to find out from you, one of the reasons, as you said, for gender-based violence is the absence of gender equality, and particularly women empowerment. What is your position regarding this, and what are you doing as a ministry for women to get the adequate support they need? And also, are you in a position, or have you been working on addressing patriarchy?
Yeah, I want to thank Padare Enkundleni. I think they're right that, there are some men who think women are of less value. And that's why some women now aggressively want to make themselves of value. And in doing so, we need really to continue to dialogue, men and women, so that we move together. Yes, as a ministry, we are advocating women's empowerment. And in my opinion, women's empowerment begins with education. If a woman is not educated, she will have limitations in the future as she enters certain sectors of the economy or certain sectors in life. As a minister that has been responsible for SMEs for quite some time, I have noticed that the women that have got education, their businesses are sustainable. And also, when they close their businesses, they're able to make connections and linkages to enable them to change if they need to. So education is very, very important. It is a prerequisite to empowerment of women. And secondly, it's really a matter of mindset. Empowerment doesn't happen until and unless you have a specific mindset. If you continue to carry yourself as powerless, inferior, useless, the society will treat you like that. So we need to encourage women to get education, but also to change their mindset and the image about themselves, to gain confidence about themselves so that, as the commissioner said, they can stand up to certain aggressiveness that come from society or come from men. We have to begin at that level for sustainability. And then my ministry does also training and refers women to other institutions like colleges, universities, and as a ministry we have got two training institutions in Mashonaland East and also in Masvingo. But we use other institutions as well. We train women in skills, practical skills as well as management, financial illiteracy, and marketing, linkages, and so forth. So that when they are now trained and they identify a business they want to do, we then give them money, finances. We finance them through the Women Development Fund or the Community Development Fund, or we refer them to SMETCO or the Women's Bank.
Honorable Minister, you are working with, or your ministry is working with the European Union mission in Zimbabwe. They unveiled an initiative to support gender equality through women empowerment in Zimbabwe, among other issues. How has your ministry also been collaborating with the mission?
Sorry, my line was bad. Can you come again?
The European Union mission in Zimbabwe unveiled an initiative to support gender equality through women empowerment in Zimbabwe. And so would like to know, how are you as a ministry collaborating with the mission?
Oh, thank you very much. I think we are talking about the spotlight.
Yes, indeed. Go ahead.
Yes. The spotlight has really done a tremendous job, and it has achieved a lot. I'm sure you are aware that we are working in about 8 districts, and we have managed to train women. We are also working with civil society, and as a result of that program, which has got about 5 pillars, which include development of institutions, legal services, and women's empowerment in terms of funding their projects. We have done very well in Zimbabwe. There are some women who have really moved out of poverty. I'm sure you have heard that when a meeting was held in Mexico, Zimbabwe came first in terms of achievements around Spotlight. So I would like to thank the EU and also the UN, who have really supported this program, and it is going very well. But what crowned it all was the signing of the high-level political compact by His Excellency on the 27th of October last year. That sent a political message that Zimbabwe has the political will to end gender-based violence. And it was very important for that high-level compact to be signed. And I understand we are one of the very, very few, if not the only one, whose the head of state took it very seriously, that he doesn't want to see gender-based violence or sexual abuse in his nation. So that's a program really that has to be supported. I'm sure you are aware that in April we put up a safe market, which is very, very unique in that it has a playground, it has very nice ablution blocks, and also a place where people can put their waste so that those that are in the recycling business can just go there and gather the waste for their recycling or selling the papers. They are all sorted out. So I really would like to encourage those that have that program in their district to join it and to benefit from it.
So we do agree that children belong in the playground, and that there's a very hot issue and a shameful situation in our community where children, minors aged 9 and 8, were impregnated, specifically in Sholosho and Bindura. And this issue cannot be ignored, Honorable Minister. What is the government's position, or maybe even as you look at it, regarding these abuses? And also, had there been provisions made for such situations? How are we moving forward, and how are we adequately addressing such issues and making sure that we do not have the recurrence of such situations in our communities and in the country?
Yes, I think, let me say, as a government and as a ministry, we are condemning such incidents in no uncertain terms. It is unacceptable. It is unacceptable to just even think about sleeping with a child, let alone impregnating a child. And I personally have visited the 8-year-old in Pindura. It is very, very sad indeed. So as government, we are condemning it, and as government, we are saying that perpetrators should be taken to book. But unfortunately, that's why really we need to go back to the drawing board and say, where does this emanate from? You know, I want to agree with the commissioner, and that we need really to strengthen the family unit and to deal with the poverty. And the poverty is not just the poverty of material poverty. It's also spiritual poverty, cultural poverty, where people no longer know what it means to be human. Spiritual poverty, where people don't respect human life, where people don't respect each other's bodies. They see each other as sex tools rather than as human beings with whom to fulfill God's purpose in life. So it really goes beyond us legislating and us condemning, and let's say every one of us have really to ask, where on earth, what has gone wrong for the case where a mother takes her own child to be sexually abused by her own father? Is that normal?
Well, there are different reports that have arisen regarding that issue, Honorable Minister. It's a very, very, very confusing situation right now, and follow-ups need to be made. Are there follow-ups being made also in different communities by your ministry?
Yes, we are. My ministry works very, very closely with the Gender Commission. We don't have competent skills within the ministry to do such investigations, but the Gender Commission has. So when there is such a case we usually refer it to the Gender Commission because it works under my ministry. So and it has done a fantastic job in terms of the investigations that they've made. Take, for instance, the case of Machaya in Manicaland. They did the investigation and then they report facts to the police. And then thereafter, the police needs to ensure that the perpetrators are arrested.
Well, thank you so much.
In cases where the perpetrator is also a minor, it becomes very, very complicated. This is why I think the Commissioner and I are emphasizing on healing our social fabric. And then saying to Zimbabweans, what is it that changes people's behavior, for good or bad? What is it that makes behavioral change?
Well, thank you so much for that, Honorable Minister. Thank you so much for that. I think that also to get answers regarding socializing the boy child, I would like to talk to you, Mr. Vengesai. And in your opinion, and also in mind, we're keeping in mind what the Honorable Minister has stated, how best do you think that the current legal framework can be implemented to protect the rights of children? But also listen to this, how can we ensure that by addressing toxic masculinity, we avoid the risk of disempowering the boy child? So what are we learning from socializing boys to grow up supporting gender-balanced communities, in brief?
Thank you so much, Nikki. I think our legal framework is very clear in terms of what we need to do. We need to treat all our children equally. All of them, the boys and the girls, should have equal opportunities. And by that I'm saying that the boys should not be excluded in engagements toward issues to do with sexual reproduction and rights and so on, and also issues to do with equality. So I'm saying that in empowering the girl child, we should not also leave out the boy child. Empowerment should come to all so that they are at par, so that they are also empowered to make the correct decision. It's disheartening. I was listening as you were saying, to note that some of the perpetrators are even children themselves.
Yes.
So what we need to do is we need to continue to also create safe spaces where these young children are not exposed to behavior that can lead them to actually perform such acts. So
I will stop you there.
My words or my encouragement is that as a society, we need to work together, and we need also to raise awareness amongst men, amongst boys. And more importantly, I want to agree with the Honorable Minister and the Commissioner to say that I think the family is the core. We need to strengthen our families. We need to come up with strong families that are able to create that enabling environment that can ensure everyone's safety. I think that's what we need to do as a society.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. And I was going to stop you there so that you could also give us more views or your views rather on how best the family unit can be pivotal in stopping these abuses, especially when we talk about minors. But sadly, we have run out of time, and I would like to thank you, Mr. Vengesai, the Director for Padare, for joining us on the line today on Muriro on Mondays, and also Honorable Minister of Women Affairs, Community, Small and Medium Enterprises Development, Honorable Sithembiso Nyoni. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you so much, Commissioner Mauye, for the insightful report that you've shared, and also for talking to us this evening on Star FM.
Thank you.
Indeed, we have been talking about gender-based violence, sexual abuse of minors, and what needs to be done. I think that there is a consensus that the family unit, being the strongest social institution, has got a part to play in changing behaviors and also upholding cultural values. So it means that even now, as we listen on Star FM or as we reflect on these despicable situations and examples that we have raised in our conversations, we have proactive communities that are willing to address behavioral change, that are willing to address whatever cultural changes that are evident on the ground. Responsible communities that are willing to work with authorities so that we say no to gender-based violence. We say no to sexual abuse, and specifically women, girls, boys, and also men. But coming together and also challenging social institutions as the church to be able to open up spaces in the private sphere, in the public sphere, where you also then address issues that have to do with gender-based violence. In a nutshell, it's everyone's responsibility. And it means that we're now working flat out and not pointing fingers, but saying that as an individual and as communities, what can we do to adequately address the issues of gender-based violence and make sure that our children, that our people, that our communities, and that the areas in which we exist in our communities are safe. Thank you for joining us this evening. Muriro on Mondays. Back again next week.
You've been listening to Muriro on Monday. Join us again next time on Star FM.